Hey everyone, this is Rangadad. Not financial advice, just the way I'm looking at the market. This one's definitely going to be a quick one, so I've got something else to do it in half an hour. This is a little different to what I was hoping yesterday. I was hoping to do this move down earlier in the day. So we'd sort of move down and then bounce back up. Still not hating it. It's still hit the sort of key targets that I had from yesterday's video. So if you want to watch, go back and have a look at that if you can find it in an hour's worth of video. Trump's CBDC banned. Yeah, right. That's freaking ridiculous. It's this kind of thing that is potentially a topping signal. Yeah, big business and celebrities trying to jump into crypto, thinking it's going to make them a shit ton of money. I reckon that could go against them. But yeah, look, basically retesting the 50 EMA on the daily. Still a little bit to come down if we want to properly retest this diagonal here, which, I mean, we're pretty close to it anyway. That diagonal's probably could be drawn a little differently to that even and still be valid. So I'm not too worried about that. What concerns me more is if we do start continuing further down, then there's actually not a lot of liquidity there to grab. So we could flush quite quickly. I still think there's going to be a ton of support around 98, 99, maybe even into the point of control around 96 and a half. But I'll tell you what, if we're breaking these sort of, well, let's just say there's another down day and BBWP pops up, that's not going to be great. I would expect actually a more extended run to the downside. But at this stage, stochastic momentum still to the upside. BBWP is still resetting. It's what is it? It's basically flat. There's no change based on today. So whichever way it's going to move over the weekend is probably going to govern the start of Feb, the first week of Feb, I'd say. The good thing is what's happening is we've got consolidation just below the all-time high close. And consolidation below a level like this quite often leads to breakouts. And the chop that we're seeing on the shorter time frames, like this kind of price action here, is just bullshit. Basically, quick runs up, quick runs down. That's a liquidity grab if I've ever seen one. Perfectly into this vector candle here. Recovered almost, well, more than 50% of it. Bouncing off these other trend lines that we had on the charts from earlier in the week. This one here is actually, I would consider that tagged, this particular trend line, because moving it up picks up the bottom of these candles here. Now, is there more downside risk? 100%. It could come down further into this vector candle, and we do have this vector candle here. Now, this was a pretty solid turnaround. Quite often coming into a candle like this, particularly with vectors, because there's bugger all wick to the downside, typically it will actually provide support sort of right at the bottom of this candle. So I would expect to bounce at 100K or 100, 250. There is a little bit the same sort of thing down here though, like 97.7. But if we're getting down there, I'd expect it to sort of sweep a little bit lower too. There is that downward channel as well. But for the time being, this is a pretty decent level for it to bounce off, and it would still be technically a higher low if it did. It was a good tag the other day of that upper trend line. But yeah, this is just market makers going for liquidity, which is what it's all designed to do. Getting a little bit of volume divergence on price on this candle here as well, and it does look like it's slowing down quite a bit. I mean, momentum's in its favor until you're breaking back up above probably at least the 13 EMA, or back up above this trend line here even. This trend line has been hit sort of multiple times. It's not a great one, it's more of a zone. But there's definitely a trend there. So I'd like to see it not break back below this level. I think if we're breaking below that, it is going down probably to 100K. And that would probably tag this trend line. 100,800 is basically that trend line. So if we wicked below that and then bounce back up, that would be a proper test of it, but it wouldn't be looking great either. So still another 4.5 hours to go roughly. Yeah, not looking great, but really, realistically, if we bounce off 96, 97, that's still not the end of the world. Shorter time frames, 4 hour and stuff like that, you're probably looking at a lower low. So it might be reversal of trend, but I'm really going to be paying a fair bit of attention to the daily here. If this momentum switches to the downside and BBWP jumps up, then it'll be shorts only for a little while. But for the time being, I've actually put a long in down the bottom here, just because I think it'll come back up at least and recover this vectors. We also slipped through the 200 EMA and the 50 EMA without retesting it on the 15-minute. So typically there would be a bounce reasonably soon. Don't worry about these trade indicators too. This isn't in production yet. I haven't actually had time to do anything to it lately. But yeah, volume, cumulative volume is like the RSI is getting quite extended to the downside. And it looks like it's turning around a little bit. So 15-minute momentum's very much the downside still, but I suspect that will turn around relatively soon. So yeah, that's pretty well where we're at. It's a pretty critical level. If we grind up from here, sort of reconfirm this trend line here, get back above the 200 and the 50 EMA, then and do it in a reasonably positive way, like not just reject straight off it, then I would actually expect us to start moving back to the upside. The big issue is we've still got looming issues on the general stock market. So equal weight Qs has basically sucked up all the vector candles in here and rejected today. Still closing. It looks like it's going to close below this high at this stage. If the last few sort of candles of this one actually pick up, and move to the upside, which it could well do. Momentum's in an area where it could turn around. If this just starts to tick up towards the end of the session, then that's reasonably positive. But at this stage, it's pretty heavy to the downside, and breaking below 15-minute 800, which is your 1 hour 200, that's not a great level to break below. It looks like it wants to at least close this gap here before the session's over. Just down around 21,619, potentially even into that level. But if we bounce off 21,620 right at the end of the session, then it's not a bad thing, particularly since we got some vector candles here. But what I expect would be more likely, if the bulls are still in the market, is we come down into this level here, and then, like I said, this may be how it travels in the pre-market on it's Sunday, Monday my time, something like that. And then then you would move back up to the upside and take out these vectors here. So the general stock market's a little bit more dicey, certainly on edge. This is going to look like a pretty nasty candle. Whoops. If it closes like this, recovery of that that gap, and then a hanging man candle would not bode very well for next week. So yeah, that's definitely something to pay attention to. Chinese markets back in action slowly next week. So we'll have to see what that does for liquidity, global liquidity, which is still ticking. Oh, actually, that hasn't even printed because of that. Yeah, we'll have to see how global liquidity comes out of that gap. There is another indicator. Global liquidity index that a lot of people seem to use. Don't necessarily it's great, but it is suggesting downside. Interesting. It does seem to be actually a forward predictor how things go, but then you've got big disparities in it. So it's not a great one. I'd prefer this calculation here, just in terms of its usefulness. I haven't fully backtested the other one though, so it might be more useful than I think. Yeah, look, there is a few EMAs here that could potentially hold price. It's just that this doesn't look great, realistically, on the NAS. It does look better on the equal weight Qs though. So technically, we're still uptrending here on the equal weight Qs. Yeah, interesting to see which one governs that. Because typically the Qs, the equal weight, has been leading the general market lately. SPY did something very similar. So it hit all-time highs end of last week. And yeah, we're getting fairly big rejection candle here. Not ideal by any means. 60-30 is going to be an interesting level, but geez, the sell-off on the end of the day seems pretty significant. So worthwhile looking at the last probably half an hour of trade on those just to see where things end up. If it's still down, then I'd expect next week to be red, and Bitcoin will probably get affected by that. Yeah, equal weight S&P 500 is, well, it's still in its range. It's not out of the bullish control zone yet. It's just going sideways. Not at a great level though, but when you're consolidating at highs like this, if it does break to the upside, it will be a pretty good run. It's not quite there yet. Yeah, no, that's just having a look at those levels to see if probably should just draw it there. Now that we've sort of tagged that level. So yeah, not looking great on the equal weights, but you sort of got to wait till this breaks below here to be properly bearish, I would say. And even then, you'd kind of expect it to retest this level and bounce off that 178. Whether it makes a new high from there or not, we'll have to wait and see, but it's not looking great. Or the Russells, it's a pretty nasty close for a Friday, actually. Like the market's expecting something. I had a look at the Forex Factory too, and the GDP is still dropping in Canada, yeah, but core PCE came in line with what was expected. Employment cost index is still relatively high. Now, I think what's potentially happening is the employment cost index is high. Yesterday, where was it? So the pending home sales is coming down. And yeah, advanced GDP is coming down a little bit. But unemployment claims are still like relatively low. And I think the market's looking at it going, well, okay, GDP is still looking okay. So what reason has the Fed got to actually cut rates? The answer's probably not much just based on these numbers. Now, obviously, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes that is why they should cut rates, but the Fed doesn't necessarily look at those indicators. See, durable goods orders were okay. Month on month, they were down though. So economic data-wise, there's not a clear direction for the Fed to say cut rates. The smart money pulled back a little bit yesterday. That's not too bad, but yeah, this disparity between smart money and dumb money is kind of suggesting there should be at least a bit of downside soon. The other thing is there's reason to suggest that this is distribution up here. Like, there's some massive trades all across the top. These look like they were buying dips. And one thing I noticed too, if we look at last year, funnily enough, these guys were putting massive trades right at the highs, right at the start of a consolidation phase. And that's a massive consolidation phase, by the way. But if you look at it from the same perspective, you might say, well, okay, these guys are just buying and they like to buy when they think stuff's got momentum to the upside, and that could be the case, but I don't know. There's a lot of big trades up there. So a little bit sus on this. They've certainly been placing a lot of large orders in the highs, and we didn't see another big one at the start of the day. Any largest. Okay, so we did actually bounce a little from there, but pulled back. The other thing I guess you got to be careful of is when Bitcoin does, do a quick run up like this and then pulls back hard. That's typically a sign that it is going to continue, at least on a liquidity hunt. Looks like it is finding a bit of support here off that trend line though. All right, 10 minutes to go. We'll just whip through this. XLI's still holding, but momentum is to the downside on that. XLY, XLP is still up around the highs. Filled that gap though, so it's not a great thing. XLP versus SPY is kind of still bouncing off this trend line. So this is an indicator that downside. It's an indicator of downside potential. Equal weight still pretty high. Just have a look at the momentum on that. Yeah, momentum's coming down. So look, it probably is the start of a decent pullback. Realistically, there's no break of trend yet, no major trend on the equal weight. XLP versus SPY. But yeah, Staples is sort of trending up. This is a retest of this level. I'd kind of expect Staples to drop at the same time as everything else though. It's just a matter of whether it drops the same amount or not. Because typically the big guys will shift money. They've got to be invested in something, so they'll shift money into the Staples or the low risk plays. Yeah, consumer discretionary equal weight. That doesn't look great. KRE is still unable to get through this trend line, and we have recovered these vectors. So that's another sign that we're probably going down. Momentum is to the downside on this. Start to really mount up the downside pressure. Home construction still consolidating, probably distribution though, based on momentum, everything else that's going on. Essentially, I think for next week to be positive, you're going to have a bit of a shift in the smart money over the weekend. Something's going to have to come out, whether it's earnings or something like that after the bell, to shift it to the upside. But earnings have been kind of, I thought they were okay for most big guys, but the market has been all over the shop in terms of their assessment of it. DJI gold and heading, oh, okay. DJT gold, that's not a good close. That concerns me a bit more than most things, just because when DJT gold is breaking key levels, just look at it here. That was the start of a rundown in April 2024. That lasted, the bottom of that hit around, yeah, that only lasted a week, that one. But yeah, breaking key levels, key support levels, is not a good sign for DJT versus gold. That there was the COVID bust. The market kind of went at the same time, depending on where you take that key break. But yeah, typically DJT gold continuing to break down like this is not a good sign. That's something to pay attention to there. Yeah, it's making a lower high too, so DJT itself. DJI is pulling back from the highs. VIX has just bounced off a big key level. Yeah, it's shaping up to be a red week, I think. And interestingly, the skew had been smashed lately and the market hadn't really reacted the way I thought it would. So the skew is probably going to come down a bit more, I would suggest today. It'll be interesting to see what holds this trend line, but I suspect probably not. We'll probably chop around it and then break below, but I think need to be bearish next week, and that's probably going to affect Bitcoin now. We just didn't get that last push that we really needed to get it into a bull run yet. Could be wrong on that. So the VIX one day is still spiking. Yeah, it's probably got a bit to run. So yeah, it would make sense for the market to pull back a bit. DAX is still going for some reason. Hasn't traded this week. UK 100, holy shit, still going. UK actually got some house price data that was good apparently. TLT is pulling back. Yeah, I didn't get out of my bonds. They're still in profit. High yield corporate is finally starting to pull back as well. And this one's finally starting to pull back. So yeah, these bond indicators are starting to suggest that a bigger pullback is likely. Interesting to see what happens around those levels. Copper's, yeah, okay. Copper's rejected that trend line again. It's not ideal. Gold basically hit the mid band of this channel, started to pull back a little bit. Still looking pretty good though, closing on new all-time highs. I suspect it will pull back with the general market as well, but that's a hard one to tell. Depends how deep the market goes. Silver's looking okay. Oil's breaking down. So oil probably back into the point of control. Dixie's pushing back up. Not ideal. Still rejecting that 108 level. It looks like it wants to push higher. It could easily come back up into 110 and basically that trend line will be up in the same sort of area. Ag 7, flat-ish. Percentage of stocks above 15 moving average actually jumped. So breadth has actually jumped today, even though looks like a market pullback is looming. Tesla's having a bit of rejection of that 4 to 13 as well. So yeah, look, not looking great. Apple, as we said, tagged that high there, that trend line, and pulled back massively today. That's not a good sign. It'll probably recover some of that vector, but back below that level there is not good. All right, I got to go. Yeah, total crypto market cap making lower highs again. If it comes back to the downside, if we actually break these levels, then I'd expect it to come back quite hard with the market in general. Stable coins versus Bitcoin still hasn't gotten back above that trend line. So if we close above that again, then it's not looking great for Bitcoin. ETH versus BTC. So Ethereum's looking stronger than Bitcoin, but rejecting that freaking point of control again and that downward trend line, that's not great. Be interesting to see where these things close today. I think the close is the key on these. CME looks negative. Like this is a bearish engulfing candle if we close around these levels. So just bear that in mind. Not that Bitcoin really pays too much attention to bearish engulfing, but typically it's showing where the momentum is. So at this stage, we want to see a strong bounce up from this level, and CVD may show that. I'll just do this quickly. So a lot of the short sellers pulled orders. And yeah, we're running through a lot of liquidity at the moment. A lot of long orders, which is good. That should help hold price. Whether or not it holds it enough to actually go on a run to the upside. There is a fair few shorts coming in, I guess. Sellers, I mean. But there's still a lot of long orders down below too. So 96K to 97K is a pretty big level, at just below 97K. But yeah, if the rest of the market is tanking, then Bitcoin looks like it wants to as well. Cumulative volume delta on spot is still elevated, but obviously dropping pretty hard at the moment. Starting to see some buyers come through on, so a bit of divergence there. Just it's not great yet. Lots of buyers coming through, so that is a relatively good sign. Bit of a bottoming signal here as well, which is handy. And liquidity, obviously we took that finally yesterday, and it looked like it wanted to go up, but it was just getting ready to pull back harder into this liquidity around here as well. So yeah, it looks like it's drying up, but if you go out to say the 1 month, there's a little bit for it to come back into. But yeah, this level here, there is a gap. So if it comes down, that 99 level is going to be key. If we gap down again, then it could actually keep flushing for a while. But you would expect bounces around that 100K mark. You'd expect a bounce here, 100K, roughly 99, so, and then about 96 to 97. Below that, it's just sort of looking at the bottom of these key areas. If we're dropping much below 96, then that's actually going to put us back inside that downward channel, and they're going to be back below quite a few key levels. So good news is there is plenty of liquidity above if it wants to reverse from here and put in a higher low, but at this stage that doesn't actually. Oh, yeah, we just got to go off price action at the moment. We need a decent bounce soon, but it's just whether or not Bitcoin bucks the trend of the rest of the market. All right, that'll do for today. I'll catch you later.